the China EVs and More podcast. In the next hour or so, my co-host Lei Xing and I will go over the week's most important and interesting news coming out of the global EV, AV, and mobility sectors. What Lei and I discuss today is based on our opinions and should not be taken as investment advice. For those that are new to the show, welcome. And to our loyal listeners and viewers, welcome back. We ask that you smash those subscribe and like buttons so you don't miss anything from us in the future. Lei and I are two of the most knowledgeable people in the world doing this, so we want your help to get the word out about this podcast. My name is Tu Lee. I am the managing director at Sino Insights, a global management consultancy that helps organizations bring innovative and tech-focused products and services to the transportation and mobility sectors. I write a free weekly newsletter that we pull many of our discussion topics from. You can sign up for it at sinoautoinsights.substack.com, which of course I encourage you all to do. A new layout for the podcast, Lei. Can you please introduce yourself?
Yeah, I do have a kind of a new office layout that I did a couple of days ago. But this is your co-host, Lei Xing, former chief editor of China Auto Review. And this is episode 220, a Chinese Valentine's Day edition.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Qixi, which means the 7th of the lunar July. So I think there's 3 or 4 Valentine's Day in China. But anyways, do we start off with the dream or do we talk about the Chengdu Motor Show a little bit first?
I actually think we should talk about the 42,000 reservations in an hour for the 9X and the Hindi的价钱, right?
All right, so we can talk about Chengdu Motor Show. Yeah, Zeekr 9X was one of a few that I think made some headlines because of the positioning and also the pricing. It is pre-sale.
Hold on. I always got to stop you because we need always background because we always get new viewers. So Geely is a Zeekr is a Geely brand, and they recently in the Shanghai Auto Show showed off the 9X in videos, in social media, and they launched it officially at the Chengdu Motor Show. And before, they blacked out all the windows, so the interior wasn't done. You and I think, agree that it's if the Land Rover Range Rover and the Cullinan, the Rolls-Royce Cullinan had a baby, it would kind of sort of look like this 9X, except for the grille, which I'm not a big fan of. But the rest of the car, first of all, it tells you that Chinese consumers love big SUVs just like Americans. And so, sorry, please continue. The one thing that's really surprising, Lei, is although we're seeing really aggressive pricing off the get, this is still pretty aggressive pricing from Zeekr.
It is pretty aggressive. I would have thought it would be over 500,000 RMB. But back to the positioning, and when you mentioned Cullinan, the nickname for it is the Hangzhou Bay Cullinan.
Yes.
We talked about that earlier. And it's interesting because the designer, Stefan Silov, he was in this promo video and he was doing the zero gravity seating himself. So he was the actor and he was the designer. And I think he's like, I don't know, 6'5"-ish. He's taller than me, so they used him kind of as a prop. But about the pricing, it is pre-sale, by the way. So they had the reveal at the Shanghai Auto Show. Now they have the pre-sale. And then the launch later, which I expect the pricing to further drop by maybe a few 10, 20,000 RMB. It's entirely possible. Which gets into very close the battery purchase pricing of the ES8, the new ES8, which starts at about 418,000, I remember. Yeah, so that's market competition. I would have thought it would be at least over 500,000 RMB based on the posture, based on the size of it, based on the feel, but that's the market, right?
I also thought it was going to be at least 500,000 RMB. So very surprising. And what do you think about the interior?
Well, I mean, it's a flagship. If it's a Hangzhou Bay Cullinan, it's got to be the Rolls-Royce interior, especially with the knob, with the stack, right? So, I mean, it's what you would expect.
So you and I, let's just be frank and upfront about this. We're fans of Zeekr because number one, we're buddies with Geely and Ash, right? But also Frank Wu, formerly of Jidu Jiyue, is now also part of the leadership on the design team. And I don't think he's had that much influence in the X, but I could be wrong. We should talk to him about that. But that being said, go ahead.
No, I think he's working on future models. I don't think he had a part in the 9X.
And so I agree. And so, I don't have an agenda. You don't have an agenda. We want them all to win. Unfortunately, that's not going to happen. But Zeekr is the case where they have a big conglomerate in Geely backing them. They seem to have a pretty robust European strategy. The lineup of vehicles is now much more complementary than it was a year or two ago, especially now that they have this flagship 9X. They also have the Mix. They have the 7X. They have the smaller X. The unfortunate thing is I've been told, and I'd mentioned this in previous podcasts, is that the Australian market is still pretty challenging for them. So.
Yeah. And then they also have, on the Volvo side, they they started pre-sale of the XC70, which is an entirely China-specific, maybe it's from one of the SMA platforms, maybe, born out of that, especially catered to the Chinese market, right? Starting at under the B300, so $40,000, a kind of an EREV, or a plug-in hybrid. And then they'll ship it to Europe maybe next year. But that's, again, what I would call a Chinese vehicle badged under the Volvo brand.
Let's have you give a brief history lesson on the Chengdu Motor Show. It's one of the top 4, Shanghai, Beijing, Guangzhou, and Chengdu, correct?
Yep, here's how I would position it. So Beijing, Shanghai would be what the industry calls the A+ auto shows, international auto shows, and the Chengdu and Guangzhou would be the A-. And then the rest of the regional auto shows are kind of the B or below. That's kind of the positioning. But I think it's losing luster over recent years. The last time I attended Chengdu was 2018. And so it's kind of a show that's welcoming the autumn. It sets up kind of the new selling season, end of the summer, but I think it's losing luster, especially given that people are more, they like to do individual events, and there's so much going on, especially this year, right before
the global trend.
Yeah, right before IAA, which is basically later next week or the following week. So it's difficult to juggle. And then, I saw some pictures that people are posting. It's still jarring to me, even though we've been to the auto shows. It's all you see on the showgrounds are the live streaming stands. And I just look back at when I attended previously, that wasn't the case. I did see quite a few Chengdu Motor Shows on the press day. The salespeople will have their boards or iPads in their hands, and they're lined up, even on the press days. They're ready to talk to you. So
and
Chengdu
try and get your QR code.
Yeah, Chengdu is more also a kind of a dealer sales shopping mall type of show rather than the Beijing and Shanghai, I would say. But still important, I think, for a lot of these brands.
Well, there's still vehicle launches, so I think that is important. The Volvo launch
was the day before. They had an individual event, I think.
So here's how important that Volvo launch was, because somebody texted me and was like, hey, why is the Volvo share price bumped up? And I looked and I was like, oh, that's because they launched this car. I'm not saying there's a direct correlation, but I'm assuming that people saw that they had launched the vehicle in China for China, the XC70, and were like, oh, pretty impressive. So it matters. The Chengdu Motor Show still matters, and the OEMs still look at it as an opportunity. Maybe even to not have to have such sharp elbows because of the Beijing and Shanghai Motor Show. If you launch something and you're not one of the premium brands that are globally recognized, it's going to be very difficult for you to get any air breathing room, because you'll get aped like that. Maybe it's good for the smaller brands or the lesser aggressive brands. Maybe
so
that's
none
not
of the super luxury brands were there. Porsche wasn't there. Some of the joint ventures weren't there. And I just, if I look at maybe some of the top models that I glanced over last night and earlier this morning, we talked about the Zeekr 9X. I thought the other ones I mentioned, Bronco, PHEV, and BEV, had their global debut. Not available in the US market, but that's another specifically Chinese market vehicle. I kind of like it because Ford is going in a completely different direction. They're trying to go with these niche models rather than
those things are going to sell. Those things are going to sell.
They will. I think they will, depending on how they price them.
Yep. BEV version of the Bronco does not look the same as the ICE version of the Bronco in the United States.
It's different.
It's worth mentioning.
Yeah. It's a 650 kilometer range. And then the PHEV, I think it's got the 1200 kilometer with a battery range of 200. And they I thought it was interesting. They have this, what do you call it? A roof that you can raise. So when you put a bed in the car and you sit in it, you actually have headroom. What do you call that? I thought that was an interesting feature.
Accordion?
You know, like a triangular thing that you can raise on the roof?
Yeah.
So that's kind of interesting.
Oh, man.
And then I kind of mocked the Exeed ET5 because we all know what the ET5 but it's important because
you and I know the ET5 very well because we drove it for 800 miles. So
the Exeed ET5 is the first model globally with the Horizon Robotics 6P chip, and I believe the HSD from Horizon Robotics launching, which is they're trying to compare it with FSD, the capabilities. So I think that's important, even though I kind of mocked it being the same name as the NIO ET5. And then the Roewe M7 DMH. Do you remember the Pearl concept?
Yeah.
That kind of looked like the Jaguar Type 00. That's the first model from that concept. And it's a B-class plug-in at around 100,000 RMB. Well designed, I think. And then the other one is the HypeTech A800 flagship sedan with the Huawei ADS. I think those are the few, maybe plus the Volvo XC70, the notable ones revealing or launching at the Chengdu Motor Show. That's it.
And the Chengdu Motor Show is much smaller than the other auto shows, by the way. Just FYI. So you wouldn't expect a ton of huge launches from this show.
No. Well, the venue isn't necessarily smaller, but
right,
the kind of the scale, and it is smaller.
This is what Westerners would consider like a regional auto show as opposed to a global auto show. Yeah. So, and for those wondering, Roewe is an SAIC brand. And, you know,
all of these brands that I mentioned, the Chinese brands, most of them, they most likely have a well-known international designer behind these designs, right? Roewe, I think
without question.
Joseph Caban, and then I talked about Stefan Silaf. He was with Bentley before.
Yeah, without question. So what media is starting to focus on right now is the IAA. There's been articles about the Neue Klasse, challenges with software, because Zipsa just said we cannot make any mistakes. And so there's a lot of buildup for BMW and what they're going to show at IAA next week or in 2 weeks. And luckily, you and I will be there at IAA. So we're going to get to see firsthand, talk to the people, and give perspective. I think people will be interested in hearing from us about how much. Here's the thing. There's a distance between the Chinese EV makers and the Western automakers. What I think you and I can do really well is give perspective on how much how much they've caught up, or are they catching up?
That's exactly what we're going to look for, is to see that distance after 2 years, because we were there in 2023, and boy, time flies, right? How much have they caught up in terms of the kind of the cockpit software? I think that's definitely what we're looking forward to finding out.
And I'm curious to see who wants to make the biggest splash. XPeng is going to show off the P7, so that is going to be a highlight, I'm sure, of IAA. BYD is, as far as I know, is not going to be launching any new products.
Well, they
at
have
the show.
I forget the name. It's a touring, a DMI touring. I believe it's was it one of the ocean animals? Maybe.
Yeah.
There's so many names I can't remember. Maybe seal or maybe whatever. Not seal, some other animal.
So let's park this for a second.
Yeah.
Let's park this because BYD started shipping kits from China to Thailand, and then doing final assembly in Thailand, and then shipping those to the EU.
Yep.
And this was their first shipment, 900 units. So first of all, the Thailand facility is online. They also ship kits into India. And they are going to be shipping kits into Malaysia. Why this is important is because they're not adding capacity from what they have in China, because effectively they're still doing a lot of sub-assembly at these factories. So the challenge for the Chinese government is if there's overcapacity in China and then these Chinese automakers leave China and then build more capacity, it doesn't help their overcapacity issue in China. But if they're able to keep, first of all, not add any additional capacity in China, and then once demand settles down a bit in the Chinese market, they can still utilize any excess capacity to ship kits abroad. Okay, I think this is a great strategy for companies like BYD. And who was the company that? Oh, that was Leapmotor. Leapmotor was shipping kits to Hungary, right? Or I think it was Hungary.
Yeah, they also have plans to build in Spain.
And the Spanish are happy to take that foreign direct investment and those jobs.
And Leapmotor is, I was just going to say Leapmotor is also launching, I believe, the B05 compact SUV at the IAA. And then they've already shipped the B10 catered to the European market, under 30,000 euros starting price.
But let me ask you this, Lei. If you're Vonderland, is that good enough? If I'm shipping kits into Europe, does that count as locally manufacturing?
As long as
I don't have the answer. But
I don't either. But I'm sure BYD have studied this, and I mean, there's always loopholes, always ways you can get around it.
Well, the ultimate loophole is pushing the German manufacturers to accept and pressure the EU to lower tariffs and make it easier for the Chinese to import into the EU.
No, that's
and
still
let's do this.
discussed.
Let's do something new, Lei. For those that are watching, let us know what you think. Do you think the EU is going to be restricting shipping kits, and or do you consider that domestic manufacturing if they're not manufacturing the entire vehicle in country?
Well, we'd like to see some comments. Sure.
Yeah.
We don't have the answers, but at least that's in progress, and there's ways to bypass some of the restrictions or tariffs. But even with the tariffs, they're going over there, right?
Well, the tariffs aren't prohibitive like they are in the United States.
And I was saying that the discussions about kind of the pricing, it's still going on. There's not been much progress, but it's still going on. And maybe EU is more preoccupied with, well, they did have that agreement with the US
on standardizing the vehicle specifications.
Yeah.
So
it's kind of fluid. So, and then, the IAA is becoming, right, the BYD, Leapmotor, XPeng, Hongqi, Aito, Ito, right? We saw some posts
CATL.
about Ito, CATL, a few other battery suppliers, Horizon Robotics, Black Sesame, Momenta, Mini-i. These are all relevant. Zhuoyu is quite an important, the DJI Auto spinoff, which working with Volkswagen on their ICE model ADAS solutions. I think a lot of the relevant players up and down the chain are in Munich. Not
Without
only the
question.
OEMs. I rather pay more attention to the even RoboSense, Hesai. They're all there, as they've been the last few years.
It was obvious to us 2 years ago that the Chinese, not just OEMs, but the tier ones were there. So I want to understand and see whether the local Europeans that are attending the show actually realize that a lot of these companies are now Chinese. Because I think it was a little bit under the radar a couple of years ago. You and I know because we live in this space, but
yeah.
One
example.
How comfortable they are.
Well, the answer is one example. Last time Horizon Robotics was in IAA, all they displayed were their partner domain controllers utilizing their chips. They actually did not exhibit any of their chips. I wonder what happens this time, because it's part of being, for lack of a better word, careful. Because Horizon Robotics is they're kind of a second tier 2 supplier, although they are directly working with Volkswagen. But those are delicate topics when it comes to chips.
As NVIDIA has their earnings, and Jensen Huang has been all over the news the last couple of days.
Yeah.
The NVIDIA and Qualcomm most assuredly are now looking over their shoulders, because let's name them all if we can. Huawei, XPeng, NIO, Alibaba, Horizon, Black Sesame, they're all designing their own silicon. Will likely use SMIC as the foundry that fabs all of this silicon. This $4 trillion valuation of NVIDIA is really, really in jeopardy of getting cut out at the knees, taken out, not because NVIDIA doesn't have great chips, it's just this priority to domesticate some of the more advanced silicon being used in data centers and AI training and in intelligent driving.
And add Li Auto into it, right?
Li Auto.
They're going to have their own M100 chip next year, perhaps. I mean, Jensen was in quite a few interviews. He just very bullish on first of all, still the opportunities that he said American tech companies in China. I thought that was interesting. He talked about the 50 billion market opportunity that's going to grow at 50%. And he's not part of it yet, well, with respect to the H20 chips, but he's part of it on the ADAS side with the Thor and the Orin, which are being replaced gradually by the Shenji chips, by the Turing chips.
Yeah. As Qualcomm is dialing up their suite of hardware and software called the digital chassis.
Yeah.
Because, it's a known fact that if you have any type of cutting edge connected vehicle, the front is controlled by Snapdragon. The intelligent driving is using NVIDIA silicon. So that is going to change pretty drastically over the next 48 months, I think. And we're likely to see a bubble in China because there are so many chip designers. Originally, it was just Horizon and Black Sesame were the two highlighted companies, but now...
Well, there's that, what's the company name? Capricorn?
Yeah.
Which grew 4,000% or something. It was still small. Hangzhou is the Chinese name, but there's many.
And it's important to note that chip design as well as chip fabrication is really, really, really tough.
Yeah.
So even if the chip designers are able to get to 2 nanometers and less, which NVIDIA is and AMD are able to get to, SMIC, can they build to spec, right? those are going to be some of the other challenges. It's a supply chain thing. It's not just an innovation and design thing.
And Li Auto talked about doing this within 3 years, from start to, I think they had a tape out and return of the chip. It was shared on the earnings call. Within 3 years, I don't know the normal process or how long it takes, but they said it was fast, that they can do it in 3 years.
The challenge is that with being vertically integrated, see, this is where BYD has such an advantage, because all of these teams are new at the OEM side, with the exception of BYD, who has designed chips and fabricated their own chips since day one, effectively. So to have that type of domain knowledge internally already, now BYD is not designing, or historically weren't designing AI chips. Okay. So, but also if you look under the hood a little bit deeper, NVIDIA has CUDA, which is the software system that supports all of their silicon. Now look to an Alibaba, all these companies, to also create some software that optimizes for their silicon, but it also creates this moat that makes it hard to get out if you're already in the ecosystem. And that's what NVIDIA is hoping for. They're probably going to drop price on their silicon as they see more and more competition in order to get people into the ecosystem. And that's where they got you. So keep an eye out for that stuff. So, man.
And then,
wow,
no, I just saw this morning, we talked about NIO, we talked about Shenji. NIO just announced they're standardizing all of their vehicles with 100 kilowatt hour batteries packs, which is what you will call a non-price cut. I have to credit you on that. But right, we talk about the bloodbath and the price war. It's still going on, but just in different ways, and that's still a lot of pressure.
Let me give a quick supply chain example. Okay, so Lei, you make the front console for the ES8, okay? So it's one part number, but the interior of the ES8 comes in 5 different colors. So now you're dealing with 5 part numbers. And so when you standardize into one SKU, you eliminate a lot. It's not just, okay, I just eliminate one thing. And number one, you create economies of scale. Number two, you simplify the manufacturing process. Okay. And then for battery swapping, you up the utilization rate. So now you don't need as many batteries probably, because you don't have as many SKUs to manage. And that's why. Yeah.
Speaking of,
that's why Henry Ford was like, you can have any color as long as it's black.
Yeah. Speaking of standardizing SKUs, Li Auto did that with the i8. They tweaked it. The P7 launch, we saw a lot of that, standardizing features. By the way, the pricing of the P7 was lower than I expected, starting at 219,800. And then I think going forward, you're going to see that a lot too, standardized, even on the Zeekr 9X. And that's part of the non-price cut, price cut. Throwing in all the features, this costs 16,000. I'm giving you it free for a limited time. That costs 8,000. It's free until whenever.
And think of it this way: with the next pricing and launch, Li Auto, ball is in your court, because now the L9, the flagship SUV E-Rev from Li Auto seems a little bit out of sorts when you compare it to the lower end L90 and the top end 9X.
Well, Li Auto, we talk about Li Auto a little bit in their earnings call. They're primarily employing 2 tactics. One on the VLA ADAS side, agent, and then the other side is on their sales and marketing tactics, which they think will help them pass through this kind of round of turbulence, if you will, because they are seeing the L series going down a little bit. And the guidance, they're guiding less than 100,000 in Q3, which for a company like Li Auto is bad, because they've done over 150,000 quarters before. And now they've launched their I series. They're launching the i6, which I personally would feel as a consumer, I rather like the i6 rather than the i8 because it's a 5-seater. But how much will they price that model?
And this is not happening in a vacuum. This has XPeng 8 months straight or 9 months straight now of 30,000 unit sales a month. This as NIO launches the L90 and sees huge success. This as NIO launches the new ES and aggressively reprices it.
This narrative suddenly is flipped. Remember how much of a NIO and XPeng were in a funk maybe 12 months ago, and how Li Auto was just steaming ahead, and now it's the other way around. And what was interesting was in that podcast with Luo Yonghao, He Xiaopeng, he said every 12 to 24 months, any of these new startups, they go through that. Right now, it's Li Auto going through it. And
he basically said it's cyclical.
It's cyclical.
It's a momentum thing. It's a product thing. But let's talk a little bit more about He Xiaopeng's interview. You tweeted about the whole 5 automakers. So can you give us a little bit of background? Who interviewed him? What was this all about?
Luo Yonghao is the Chinese internet celebrity and live streamer. He taught English at Xindongfang New Oriental. He's a big shot now. And he just started out with his own kind of the Chinese Joe Rogan style. Not so much extreme, but the way they talk and they ask questions is not like an interview. It's really a down-to-earth kind of you and me being honest and telling some of the backstories of these companies and how they started the companies and the people part of it. So he's starting out with this series now, which interviewed Lei Xing first, He Xiaopeng in the second episode, and I'm wondering if he's going to do William Li in the next episode.
I'm sure they've reached out. I'm sure they've reached out.
So in these podcasts, both Li Xiang and He Xiaopeng have talked about very provocative perspectives. One being the 5 automakers remaining. And I was watching it and I'm thinking there's no way that He Xiaopeng at this point think that he will be one of 5 that will remain. But he said that's what makes it interesting because you have to fight.
And he's wrong. Yeah. It's not going to be 5. It's going to be more than 5.
Yeah. Would it be eventually 5? 2040, 2050? We don't know. Maybe. But I think he alluded, I don't think it's going to be 5 by 2030. I can't see that happening either.
I mean, there's 5 SOEs. There's more than 5 SOEs.
So, but I do think those SOEs, a few of those, 2 or 3 could become 1. That is possible.
Well, let's drill down. Because Dongfeng is restructuring. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Dongfeng, the Hong Kong listed entity, DFMG, is being privatized to pave the way for the IPO of Voya.
On the Hong Kong exchange.
Yeah, from Hong Kong. And this followed the Chang'an Group, which had a reshuffle earlier this year of the parent company of the centrally administered. So now there's, with what happened to Chang'an, there's 3 Chang'an, FAW, Dongfeng are the 3 centrally administered state-owned automakers. And what's going to happen with these 3 companies going forward? Maybe 2 of them merging into 1 is not out of the question.
And what's weird to say, 10 years ago in China, that would have been unheard of. Now we're actually talking about it like it's more real than fantasy, which is, it's a tectonic shift in the competitiveness and the need to be competitive and profitable, because these state-owned enterprises, I've never looked at them as these innovative, really profit-driven companies, but we're seeing that pressure now on them.
And at the same time, we have a company called DreamMe entering.
Oh yeah, let's talk about that.
Right? I mean, there's brands that are still emerging. I'm talking about brands within established automakers, or let's say Huawei adding the Shangjie brand. There's still more coming. But there's also these new players that are still entering, and these are from the robot vacuum. We now have two. Rocks.
The Chinese Dyson.
Yeah, the Chinese Dyson. Well, there's many Chinese Dysons, just as many Chinese Googles or Chinese Facebooks or whatever. But Dreame is one of the top selling robot vacuum makers or brands. Globally.
Is that how you say it, Dreame? You say Dreame?
I think that's how you say it. Or if it's because the
Zhongwen.
Chinese, Zhongwen is Dreame.
Dreame, okay.
Which means literally to explore and to search.
Okay.
So this is the second robot vacuum company that's entering following Rox. Now, Rox is producing this 01 Li Auto Wannabe E-Rev SUV.
Yeah.
And selling about like 13,000 units a month. But now Dreame has entered the conversation. And
we're talking, they are aiming at the Bugatti.
That's the thing, right? It's not just we're entering, but we're going to challenge the Bugatti Veyron, the world's fastest.
And let's be clear about this, Lei, because in 2015, 2016, 2017, you don't have any Chinese company thinking they can challenge the ultra luxury vehicles.
No, but in the letter that Dreame posted, they said this has been under the wraps for 13 years. And now they're finally ready to make an announcement. And this thing is coming in 2027. One of the things about Dreame, I think what they're confident in is their motor technology. Their robot vacuums are known for 160,000 RPM to 200,000 RPM motors, which makes the sucking of the dirt and stuff much more impressive. And the guy who started the company is a graduate of Tsinghua University. I think he was in
Tsinghua is MIT.
MIT, so he was in a special program, and then we can literally look at it as a Chinese Dyson doing what Dyson didn't do, just like what Xiaomi did what Apple didn't do, almost like that.
Let's unpack this a little bit, Lei, because 13 years in the making. This tells me that the timing is right from a market standpoint. The technology is there from a technical feature and spec standpoint. The confidence that the company can put something on the road that they can associate, competes directly with the Bugatti is there. There's so many different things that culminate in this 13 years in the making quote that they made.
They have over 1,000 people already in the project. And one thing they do have is there's nowhere else the resources that China has if you want to start a company doing EVs. Right? They're standing on shoulders of giants, of the established players, of
Li Bin, of Li Xiang, of Wang Tuanfu, of...
Also, they're standing on the resources of these emerging Chinese tech companies that we mentioned earlier.
Yes.
So maybe that helps them with it, but still question mark. I don't know. Nothing should surprise us anymore. If there's another Li Bin or another Lei Xing, it's China. You'll find it in China.
Yeah. So, hey, we're at 9:50. I don't really have anything else.
Same here. I do have a stop at 10, so we're good on time.
Okay. So let's go to questions. Let's go to comments. SPX, what's going on, SPX? Good to have you on. Good morning, guys. How's the new P7 momentum, reservation, and public opinion compared to the SU7?
So the P7, I did look at their history of the Mona MO3 and the P7 Plus, how much orders they got within the first, minutes or hours. P7 was definitely the most.
Yes.
7 minutes, 10,000, I think, which makes me to believe that this is going to be another 10K a month model, which He Xiaopeng says they're confident they're going to do 40,000 in September and achieve break-even by Q4.
I didn't finish the question because here's the interesting part for us, Lei. If both are available in the United States, putting aside practicality, which would you go for and why? That's a
Both
great
meaning
question, XPX.
P7 versus
SU7. So first of all, the piece is the size of a Model S. It's not the size of a Model 3.
it's big.
So
it's not a
it's
Model
big.
3. Definitely not a Model 3.
So,
even though it's
so I think
yeah.
just setting that aside, that they're different sizes. You first. What do you think?
I may have to go with the P7 just because the experience that we've had with many of the XPeng vehicles that I've had with the XPeng vehicles. Maybe I'm biased, but it's very distinctive looking. I think that's one thing that I think is what I would veer to rather than the SU7. Not discrediting what the SU7 is,
So I haven't driven the P7, driven the SU7, love the SU7. The P7, the one thing about the design, I do like the design. I think it looks great. Generally, I think the rear end is a little bit long from the wheel overhang part, but the design part, because the SUVs are so rounded, I want to see what the next G6 and G9 and G7 look like, whether it's going to incorporate and how much it'll incorporate the angular kind of right angle stuff that the P7 has. Do they keep the SUVs really rounded and the sedans very angular? But that has nothing to do with what I would buy. I'm assuming that the P7 is going to be pretty fun to drive, although it's a much bigger car. I do like the or the SU7.
SU7.
But yeah, I lean with Lei. I think, but again, I have 2 kids, so I can't stop. I can't not think about buying a car that's not going to have my 2 boys in the back seat. So, Thanks for your question, though, SPX. Jeffrey's on. What's going on, Jeffrey? SSJJ005 L80 launch is now likely delayed to 2026 in order to fulfill the L90 demand. Disappointed that they do not have capacity to supply 10,000 a month. But will F3 help this somehow?
Well, I believe the F3 is for the new ESA, or no? I could be wrong. But it may not be just the plants themselves, right? It's a supply chain, as you well know, you're experienced. So, but I mean, the momentum is, whether it's the ESA or the Envoy L90, they have to ride this momentum. So it'll be delicate to launch that L80. At what time do they launch and deliver? So that they can maintain this momentum, especially toward the end of the year. Which there's always a pull effect, because the 30,000 RMB purchase tax ends this year. And I'm still getting messages from these salespeople at me, hey, that this 30,000 ends this year. Do you still want to consider something? Right? It's a pull. I think it'll definitely pull. Just like here in the US, the September 30th tax credit ending.
That's me.
That's...
After I get off the phone, I have plans to go to
a lot of research
1 or 2 dealerships. So SSJJ005, I don't know how tough of a decision that was to punt the L80 into 2026. We're already into September. Yeah. So launching in 2025, I'm not sure how many they would have actually delivered by the end of 2025, number one. Number two, I think this is a pretty tough decision for them, because maybe they feel like they're leaving money on the table if they're not, if they see this demand for the L90, it creates momentum. And if you're not able to deliver the L90 within probably a 6-week window, they're going to go somewhere else. The Chinese consumer, Lei Jun has told people, hey man, we can't get you a U7 in 6 or 8 weeks. You need to go buy it from somebody else. Buy another car. I think it wasn't an easy decision, and to Lei's point, maybe it's not NIO and the capacity at their factory, at the final assembly or assembly factory. Maybe it's upstream where they're like their suppliers aren't able to build that. I'm not sure. It would be a good question for me to ask them. So,
well, first of all, we have to confirm whether NIO is confirming, or NIO has publicly said that this is the case.
Right.
or it's just a report or a rumor. Now I don't know, but the plan was to have the L80 launch in Q4. And Li Auto, I mean, they're very clear. i6 is launching and start delivering at the end of September, which I think should be a more volume driver than i8.
If the brand Li Auto is hoping that what happened with Xiaomi and the U7 happens with the i6, that kind of people forget about some of the challenges that Li Auto has had recently in social media, like a reputation challenge, because their challenge wasn't driven by an accident or a tragedy. It was driven by the water armies. The last question, Lei, we the audience don't talk about battery much. What are the big picture, like the major trends in the battery supply side? So lithium pricing is down, number one. Number two, CATL in April talked about sodium ion. They talked about dual chemistry batteries, and GM and Ford are looking at 2027 to launch LMR, which is lithium manganese rich, meaning that there's no cobalt and nickel. LMR is supposed to have a balance. And then you're looking at the LGs in the United States have decent capacity now to start rolling LFP cells. So a rebalancing is happening. Now on the mineral mining and refining side, there's still a ton of work that needs to be done, especially into the rare earth magnets. But if we're just talking about batteries, Lei, add anything you want from my summary.
Well, I think we talk about kind of the chemistry side of it. There's always been chat about sodium ion, solid state, but I think at least with respect to China, in terms of the product side of it, we're seeing very interesting things because of the EREV versus the BEV, of what you put on an EREV. Some of it is getting really big to have 400, almost 500 kilometers of range on an EREV. And then NIO deciding to put the 100 kilowatt hour battery. Those are very dynamic of how the feature, spec, pricing, and overall the pricing, as you mentioned, is going down, which can afford the NIOs and Li Autos and Xpengs to price their vehicles at lower expected prices, because that's the general cost reduction from the volume side and also from the scale side of it, the battery supply.
Here's the key for Legacy Auto. I hope they are really paying attention to what's happening in China, because the EREV that has a decent sized motor, that's the perfect solution to a full size truck that needs more than 300, 400 miles of range when you're towing or when there's a heavy payload. So it could be the perfect bridge for the pathway towards completely battery electric, and or maybe it's a subsegment of clean energy vehicles. Now, the purists don't believe EREVs are completely clean energy, and that's fine. But when we're talking about, in the words of Li Bin, survival, then the legacy automakers really, the Stellantis that sell the Ram truck, the GMs that sell the Silverado, the Yukons, and then the Fords that sell the F-150 and the Navigators, they need longer range on these vehicles. They need to be lighter. And so having a 150 kilowatt hour battery and a 9,000 pound car is just not something that is sustainable. I'm jumping off my soapbox now, and I know you got to run, Lei. So any last words before we close it out?
Just to continue, finish off what Li Bin says, the large 3-row SUVs, I think we're going into a transition phase where the BEVs will work. We're past that transition phase where you can be confident in a BEV, in a large SUV rather than an EREV.
The larger trend, Lei, is that Chinese consumers love affordable large SUVs. Now, I'd love a Tahoe. It's a $95,000 car in the United States. What if they could create an EREV Tahoe and sell it in China? That would be a hit, I believe. So,
yeah,
as long as the software and the connected was up to par.
Yeah, and then the Envoy L90, to this point, I think it's probably at the top of that competitive, pyramid in terms of that segment. There's not been too much challengers when you think about the features, pricing, battery swap. So good for them.
Everyone, as always, thanks for joining us. And
we'll
not
have
sure
to
what we're
figure
going
out
to
next
do
week. You let
next
me know
week.
because you will be in Munich by Friday, right?
Saturday. So I take a red eye. I
Okay,
think.
so we'll figure out what
I
to
still
do next
think
week.
we're going to be okay.
Okay, all right.
Next week will be an IAA preview. I'll have my schedule all sorted out, and I'm sure you will too. And then we can talk about what we expect, what we hope, and what we're excited about seeing over in Munich, besides our good friends that we probably haven't seen in a while.
Yeah.
So everyone, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. We will talk with you all next.
Bye-bye.
That brings us to the end of this week's show. Lei and I thank you for tuning in. My name is Tu Lee, and you can find me on Twitter at Sino Auto Insight. That's SinoAutoInsight. You can find Lei on Twitter at Lei Xing 77. That's LEIXING 77. If you wouldn't mind rating and or reviewing us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you grab your podcast from, we'd appreciate that as well. Even better, if you enjoy this show, please tell your friends about it. Please join us again next week as we track down all the latest news on China, EVs, and more.